Hello, everybody. Welcome today. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening and viewing from. My name is Sheila Murrey. I'm your spiral sister. I'm an instigator, an integrator, an author, and a bridger of the unseen things. I'm here today to talk with you and present to you a book review. This will be the first in a series of three that all have to do with connecting us to something bigger than ourselves, whether that even be just our inner being or God as we know God to be, and whatever word you use to describe the creator, the source of everything in the universe, including all of us. This book was written by a good friend of mine, Jennifer H. Carey. Her last name is spelled Carey. She's a licensed mental health professional, counselor, therapist, and the title of the book is Illuminating the Stories That Bind Us. Breaking through the stories between you, your dreams, and your fully expressed life of joy and bliss. Now you might say, but Sheila, spiral sister, I have all the joy and bliss in my life that I can handle. Great. You won't need this book. But for the rest of us who love personal transformation and self-growth and healing, want to dive deeper into our psyche, know that we have some healing to do, even if it's on one issue, but perhaps it's on more than one issue. And perhaps we don't even think we have issues right now, but in the future we may encounter some. This is an excellent book to have on hand. And read it, and not just read it, but really sit with it. Take your time, work through it. Use it like a workbook, a study guide to knowing yourself better. That's how I would put it. I know the first 38 pages or so, I sort of read it with light intent because things didn't seem applicable to me. But by about page 44, you'll see from these slides that I'm showing, things started to hit home and ring true for me. One of the things I will talk about first is I love the organization of this book. I love the way Jen laid out the table of contents. Very different than other books that I've seen in the past, where she actually takes about a paragraph in the table of contents and for each chapter gives you an overview or an explanation of what you may get out of that chapter. So again, if you don't think you have any issues in your life, then you can just read the table of contents and go to the chapters that you think might be the most applicable for you at the time. I also love how Jen gives us a key in the book and points out some of the icons that she uses, like the little music symbol, because that will connect you with some suggested songs for you to listen to help you process the information that you read and or worked through and or journaled through in that chapter. On page 38, I made some notes about my family of origin, my mom, dad, and paternal and maternal grandparents. Things that I feel they did in their life that were either accomplishments or lived experiences that then helped me in my life so far, and no doubt will continue to. And then on page 44, I'm turning to it now because I know that some of the slides are difficult to see. Feel free to pause, screen capture, whatever you might like. But on page 44, I checked experience a persistent worry after a social situation that you were too much, and then carry a disbelief that you possess the talent or ability to live your dreams. I actually added a checkbox because that didn't quite fit me, but I think it brought something up for me. So I wrote in inability to complete projects and or maintain structure. It took me years to simply brush my teeth nightly. I just am not great at staying on point, shall we say. As I was saying, all of us tend to have things that irk either ourselves or others, so I really do think a book like this can help nearly everyone. I would say everyone, but I know coaches have a fit because they want you to narrow your focus to a particular audience. Even when you get speaking engagements, people will say, oh, you need to write your speech toward a particular audience of who's going to be in attendance, who's going to be listening to your speech. Anyway, not to go off on a spiral thought tangent that I'm known for. On page 46, I have a note here about, and I love the song that was prescribed to the Hoochie Coochie Man by Muddy Waters. That's brilliant because really we take ourselves too seriously. I know at least I do, and that's a mission in my life, is to laugh more and to enjoy and have fun. So I wrote a note here that I said I gave and gave at Reiki group when we lived in Florida, and I only got to level 2 because by the time I was starting the master's level, we had to work on 100 people, and this was the part that got me, we had to list the people's names and their phone number, where they lived, and they could be contacted at some point. And I did not want to make it about a sales pitch to the people that I was performing Reiki on. So that's, in the nutshell, that's what happened and why I quit. So my note says, to become a Reiki master, the teacher wanted 100 names of people. I guess I remembered it right. With phone numbers to ensure I had given them a session. I gave her and another participant avocado trees that I started from seeds. They all did really well too, those trees. So when we moved, I gave them to a couple of those ladies, but I never even got an update on how the trees were doing. So that really bothered me because I was really proud of growing those avocado trees from seeds. I later got requests, 2 years later in fact, to send distance Reiki to another lady who had attended in our group a few times, so I did know her personally. And I had invited several of these folks over to our condo, but after Richard had a stroke in October of 2022, no one came. In my opinion, they couldn't be bothered. I don't know what their reasons were, but that's what you get into, situations like this in the book, where you can look at those stories, the stories that we have in our head that help us or make us or fixate us on the judgments that we have, instead of just taking it in stride and moving on and or reaching out to find out what maybe the issue is in their life that's keeping them from visiting, that kind of thing. So Jen has here on page 47, taking a closer look at dichotomies and holding opposing thoughts. And that's really been a big work for me in my adult life, and why I loved Byron Katie so much, because we would always, doing the work with her, we would ask ourselves, is something really true? And ask it again, even. So many times we just make up these stories in our heads about people, about relationships, arguments, difficult conversations, and we just think that's the way it is. And that's the story we continue to tell ourselves. But that's not always just the way it is. It's probably just a story we've made up in our head about a situation so we can move on and live with it or even laugh about it, but deep inside we're still kind of holding a grievance there. So this book really helps you get unstuck, and in Jen's words and Mick and Tess's words, it's a breakthrough. You experience a breakthrough, and you liberate yourself from those nagging, sometimes spiraling thoughts that take you down, 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 instead of freeing you as the upward spiral shift would, that I talk about a lot on my blog and in my blog posts. But getting back to the book, nobody's perfect, I wrote down in my notes. Nobody else can be you. Then on page 48, I have a note at the journal prompt, which again, the organization of this book is fantastic because it's like your own personal private therapy session. You get a journal prompt to write about a time when, in this case, on page 48, a story was being too much, a story of yourself. You were either too much in the moment or not enough. Step back, soften, and see it through gray lenses. Write about seeing it with more layers and less extreme views. And as I often say, many things in life, if not all, can be figured out or found out or observed, or you can become aware of if you take them by layers, levels, doses, and degrees. And I'm talking about temperature degrees there, not not the degrees we achieve in life. So my note on page 48 is, one of my best friends in high school told me to get off my high horse. Now this was a kid thing. We were just kids. She just made this comment in the moment, but obviously I was emotionally charged, so her words, even I can hear her voice in my head saying those words to me. They really stuck, and they became a limiting belief for me. So I've never forgotten it. A few years ago, I reminded that same girlfriend when I saw her at one of our class reunions. I reminded her she had told me that, and she apologized. She even also apologized for something her mother did that I felt was totally unfair to me, by limiting our time together as friends. But at any rate, see, these are things that, it's just like when I start talking to you, I'm doing a book review, and these thoughts and memories, they come up because somewhere deep in the cells of my body, the 70 trillion cells, I'm holding something there. And that's also why when we go dance, or when we go get a massage, we may just start crying and tears will come out because we're moving through memories that have become dense and stagnant in our body. Okay, I'm going into spiral mode here. Let me finish up this review. I love this book so far, and I'm not through with it yet. I'm only halfway through. So I'll end with, let's see, page 49, Jen brings up the internal family systems and how she uses this, the guidance of them or that, to approach many of her strategies within therapy. I just love Jen and how vulnerable and open she is to putting personal things in this book too. It's really amazing. She's courageous, and I just love her so much. This book is really, I think it's becoming a fast favorite of mine, and one that I will definitely hand down to my daughter and granddaughters when I'm done with it. And then they'll get to know all my secrets too. Anyway, let's see, page 50. Jen talks about the parts work and how the parts, the different parts that IFS name. So let's see, there is, parts can be, I'll just give you a couple examples. The people pleaser, huge in my family. I get it in my blood through both sides of my family. People pleasing. It's a huge thing. Even if you just work on that in your life and have no other issues, you'll be the better for it. And then the inner critic, oh, I'll give you one more, the perfectionist. My husband has told me for years he thought I was a perfectionist, but I don't see it in myself. So there's that. We do some work. We do parts work. we get into it looks like the last half of the book is going to be fantastic because we we're getting into the illuminating the stories that bind us part, and that's where the interaction, which I'm all about integrating and connecting with people. So we want to have our parts integrated within ourself, mind, body, spirit, soul. Then when we come into communion and we connect with others, we can really share from a place of wholeness, where that's my whole thing. Well, the book is really getting us there and supporting us in that effort, I feel. Um, yeah. So I've underlined on page 52 the key to everything in life. Jen says, I'll quote her from the book here, um, identify our stories with curiosity and compassion versus judgment. Yeah. One of the stories is I'm not enough for my family. The parts are the people pleaser, the inner critic, the caretaker, the perfectionist, the conformist, the guilt tripper. And then 53, my note is academics and high achievers can cause C grade level students, that's the letter C, to feel unworthy of writing a book. The gatekeepers, too, the record label executives and Hollywood types, can make the average guy or gal feel unable to put their creative music out. The comic, Leanne, I'm sorry if her name's not coming to me off the top of my head. None of this is scripted, by the way. um, I've seen videos of her talking about that too, and how she wrote her comedy and she told her jokes for more than 20 years before anybody of any account really noticed her. So now, you know, she's doing the circuit. She's going out and she's performing in front of at large venues for a large number of people. And even on a TV show now too. I think it's on Netflix, I believe. So, yeah, don't allow your inner critic to hold you back from the things that you dream of doing. Um, Even the singer Pink comes to mind. She always loved the acrobatics and like swinging from the vine is what I think of, but doing velvet rope work, those silk ties and things like that you swing on, and she's doing it at her concerts now. And I bet, I know when she started, she probably never even dreamed she would do that. It was just something that she enjoyed doing, and she loves being physical. It was great exercise, and now she's worked it into her concerts. So she has amazing routines. It's like going to see Cirque du Soleil when you go to a Pink concert. I mean, who would have thought that 20 years ago or something? So my other note here is the overthinker in me keeps me awake at night. That's huge for a lot of people. So many people. People that have anxiety, that have, I don't know, is it ADHD, things like that. So many people have that situation where they're an overthinker and it keeps them from sleeping at night. Again, if this book helped you work through that one issue, it would be worth more than gold to you. So the idea generator in me keeps me from completing many things. Well, I think I'll stop here because I'm not even halfway through. I've actually read up through chapter 4, but I will stop here in the review at chapter 3 because this gets deep for me, and I don't want to make this just talking about my life experiences. Let me see if I have a couple more notes here specific to the book. Yes, the stories in relationships, this chapter 4. Was chapter 3 short? Yes, chapter 3 is a couple of pages, so you get through that quickly. But like I said, take your time and sit with this. Chapter 3 is short because it's about the foundation that Jen wants to set for us before we move forward. And then chapter 4 gets deep, because that's where we dig into our stories. And I think it's funny that I'm doing this review right now because the Story Species conference is coming up with Gina in June, so check my blog for that. Gina Casella, and so I'm doing a keynote speech June 13th. Again, that's not why we're here today, so I will stop. I just love this book. How many times do I have to say that? And Jen, if you're listening, this is amazing. This is like I'm sitting with you and you're giving me a therapy session. And maybe the point is sometimes we don't even know we need therapy until we do some inner work like this. I mean, we could just talk probably every week for years about my fear of success. But I live on a fixed income, so, there's that. And I'm 64 and have body issues I need to work on with my naturopath, so at least for now he's getting any extra funds that I have, so, and I don't have extra funds. Well, that's another topic we could work on, right? I don't think it's from a limiting belief, but I do think that sometimes we have personal constraints that, we just need to prioritize where we put our pocket lettuce, as my husband calls it. Thank you for being with me here today. I am your spiral sister, Sheila Murrey, the instigator, the integrator, the author, and an interfaith minister, because most religions don't necessarily help us when it comes to bridging the unseen. Thank you very much. Much love.